Hi, I'm Nina Melendez, and welcome to LinkedIn News Live, where the business conversation begins with you. The 5-day work week is the accepted norm for many workers, but the 40-hour work week maximum in our precious 2-day weekend wasn't mandated until the 1940s. Well, our next two guests say it's high time for another overhaul. We're going to hear from the CEO of a company that has a 4-day work week policy. But first, let's understand what's at stake for our health and happiness before we talk business. For that, I want to bring in Joe Stanek. He is a licensed counselor and host of the popular The Practice of the Practice podcast, which is recognized as one of the top 50 podcasts worldwide. He's also author of the book, Thursday is the New Friday, How to Work Fewer Hours, Make More Money, and Spend Time Doing What You Want. He received his master's degree from Western Michigan University in counseling psychology. Joe, welcome to the show.
Nina, thank you so much for having me.
So it's great to have you on, and this topic is super popular. And I just want to start from this whole work from home experiment that has been going on since COVID. What has it taught us about how we manage our work and our life?
Yeah, I think that COVID really revealed just how shaky the industrialist way was and is of working for us right now. Back in 1926, Henry Ford gave us the 40-hour work week, which was needed at the time. The average person at that point was working 10 to 14 hours a day, 6 to 7 days a week. So it was a great step in the evolution of business and for humanity. But we've seen that we no longer think of people as machines, as part of an assembly line, where the best key performance indicator is sitting in a chair for 40 hours a week. Instead, we've seen that the actual outcomes, the passion, the excitement that we could have can be different. And I feel that the movement away from that industrialist mindset has really moved us into the next phase of both business and humanity.
When I work a 4-day work week, Joe, whether it's because there's a holiday or something, I actually find that I'm trying to cram 5 days into 4, and I feel busier, and the work week actually feels longer. So can you explain that, and how do we get away from that? Is it about just being more efficient? Is it working smarter, not harder? What are your thoughts?
Yeah, the research actually tells us that we actually do waste a ton of time throughout a 5-day week. And so when we shorten to a 4-day week, we actually see that the productivity does go up. The Iceland study that was just released a couple months ago showed that productivity for a 32-hour week is actually more than a 40-hour week, meaning that those final 8 hours oftentimes are more like a hobby than they are actual work. And so we know that from Parkinson's law that work expands to the time given. And so when we give ourselves fewer hours in a week, we actually do our highest work. We work on the 10 best things instead of the worst 10 things. And so by doing that, we continue to do better and better work that's more productive over time.
Can you tell me more about that? The Parkins law, that we stretch our work according to the time that we're given?
Yeah. So, many of us in college probably experienced this where you had a test or you had a paper that was due the next day and you realize, oh no, I haven't studied or I haven't written this paper at all. And we magically get that paper done. Sure, it may not be the A paper that you were used to writing. Maybe you got a B on it. But we find when we actually give ourselves fewer hours, what we do is we don't overthink it. We actually spend time not being paralyzed by perfection and we just get things done. And so, what I've found through the book and through the research is that first we slow down and look at our internal inclinations. Then we slow down externally and allow our brains to be optimized. And then when it's actually time to work, the neuroscience is showing us that we can get more done during that time because we're focusing on the right things instead of just everything.
I want to talk about that slowing down of the mind in a moment. Let's say hi to some people who are joining us from all over the United States. Christine from New York City, Marlene is from North Carolina, and we have Dawn saying the 5-day work week is outdated. So she's in agreement. And Christine says it is unnecessary to work 5 days a week, just as it is to be in the office for that amount of time. This time adds up and leads to burnout. Burnout is huge. I do want to ask about that too, Joe. Let's go back. So let's talk about efficiency for a moment. In your research, do you think that it is more efficient if you're only going to work 4 days a week to take the Monday off, the Friday off, or is it a question of maybe taking the middle of the week off? What have you found?
Yeah, the big shift away from the industrialists who taught us that one size fits all, here's the exact blueprint of how you should do everything in every industry, is moving into an evolutionary experimental model. And so what we want to do is we want to take the basic principles and research of the neuroscience and apply them to experiments. And so you may look at two teams within a company and say, we're going to give one team team 4 days and then they're going to get 3 days off. And another team, we're going to work Monday, Tuesday, take Wednesdays off, and then do Thursday, Friday. And then we're going to have some clear KPIs for those teams and then look at with that particular team what works best. So for example, a bank that says we want to move towards a 4-day work week, their IT department can't just say, sorry, we're going to disappear. Someone's locked out of their password. We're going to actually have to say, well, we're going to troubleshoot this. We're going to get smarter over time. We're going to see what works. We're going to see what doesn't work. And then we're going to apply that. So the research right now is so new, especially around the 4-day work week, that we're seeing more and more experiments reveal what works in individual industries.
And in your book, you reference a study that spanned about 32 years, talking about the impacts on one's health from working too much and burnout. Can you give our viewers just a little, talk to us a little bit more about that study?
Yeah, well, when we look at this study over 30 plus years, it was looking at health outcomes. It was looking at mental health outcomes, physical outcomes. And in almost every area, we are worse off than people were 20 years ago. And so, especially looking at sleep outcomes, we're underslept, we're overstressed. And overall, we find that we're just less happy. Another study that I reference in the book talked about how happiness and worker satisfaction actually peaked in the middle of the pandemic in April of 2020. And part of that's because of the autonomy people had. They were able to reduce things like commutes to work, and they were able to have some flexibility within their schedules. And so we see that what the pandemic did is it really moved us into an area where we can say, is this the best that we can do? Is 2019 the pinnacle of human existence? Were we the happiest we could be, the healthiest we could be? Or could we, as the post-pandemic generation, say, let's reshape this? Because we have just a small window of time here where everyone is rethinking how we've done work. And we can either choose to go back and say, let's make it like 2019, or we can move forward and say, we've got a lot of challenges in the next 20 to 50 years that we need to address. And we don't want to be the most stressed out generation. We want to be optimized for productivity and for creativity to address those future challenges.
And so you talk about not, overwork, not sleeping a lot. That comes from sort of that hustle mentality, which is difficult to turn off, especially if you're an overachiever, as a lot of our LinkedIn members are. How do you do that? How do you turn off that inner hustler in all of us?
Well, I would actually argue that having that hustle isn't wrong. It's just, when are we going to hustle? For most of us, we've overvalued work, and too much of our ego and sense of self-worth has come from that. And we've undervalued life and fun and family and friends. And so what we want to do is we want to start to look at that from a business standpoint. Is it good for your business? Is it good for your career to be overworked, to hustle all the time? To me, when I hear people say, I haven't had a Saturday off since I was 14, that makes me think that's a bad business person. They don't know how to outsource. They don't know how to think differently and have an ego outside of their individual business. So if we're looking at saying, how do we take steps away from that? I often say to people, this coming weekend, let's add one thing and remove one thing. So let's add something that might give you a little bit of life. And so maybe there's a novel that's on your shelf or on your nightstand that you want to read, but you haven't done that. Schedule a couple hours to do that, to experiment, to see if that makes you feel better on the weekend. And then remove something from your weekend. So for example, maybe you have a friend that you're going to get coffee with, and every time you hang out with them, you feel like trash. You know that they're just a toxic friend. You're allowed to cancel that date. You're allowed to outsource your lawn. You're allowed to have groceries shipped to you. You can try some of these things to add one thing and remove one thing, so that over time you figure out what helps your brain be optimized when you slow down, so that when you enter that next work week, you're better able to go into it and absolutely kill it.
Talking about slowing down our brains and optimizing our brains, why is it that by slowing down, we tend to get more things done?
Yeah. So when I was in Nepal, in between my undergraduate and graduate school, I was in the edge of the Chitwan jungle, and our guide said to us, if we get chased by a wild rhinoceros, climb a tree. We ended up seeing a wild rhinoceros. I took a picture of it. I took another step forward to take a closer picture, and then that rhino charged us. And I blatantly disregarded what that individual had told me to climb a tree. I took off running because I knew I could sprint faster than my friend Todd. And so then when we got away from that rhino and came back, our guide shimmied down the tree and said, why didn't you go up a tree? So why didn't I go up a tree when a rhino was chasing me? When you're in fight or flight, you're going to go with what you know. I knew I could outrun my friend Todd by just a little bit. And so I did. When we are being chased by the rhino in our businesses, we don't try things that are new. We don't try the most innovative things. We go with what we know. So we get stuck in that mindset of just doing the same thing over and over because it's worked in the past. But when we slow down, when we, take that time to go for a hike, when we take a shower, that's when we have these great ideas because the brain isn't stressed out. And different parts of the brain can speak to other parts differently than when we're stressed out and maxed out.
Joe, we have never had a guest come on talking about a rhino chasing them and using that as an analogy, so I love that.
Welcome to the world of Joe Sanok.
Did he find a tree? Did he climb it? Slowing down can elicit some guilt. Maybe we feel like, if we cancel on that friend like you're talking about, if we take time to pause and read the novel we want to, maybe there's that guilt in there that like these are all the things I could and should be doing. How do we quiet that voice?
Yeah, I think especially for high achievers like you and for me, it's finding things that we can schedule into our weekends or our evenings or our days off to have some hard boundaries of this is what I'm going to do. Because if it's not in our schedule, we'll probably go back to email. We'll go back to working, back to that hustle culture. And so for me, every Wednesday, I do improv with an improv troupe. So to have that 90 minutes that I laugh harder than I do the rest of the week, I don't need an ab workout on Thursday mornings because I've laughed so hard on Wednesday nights. And so finding those things that we can add into our schedule that gives us some life, it's not for the purposes of doing better in business, but the things that I've learned through improv or the things that I've learned through learning watercolors or learning the piano, those are things that I can then apply differently as a more creative and interesting person, as a podcaster, as a consultant, as a storyteller, because I've engaged in life outside of just that hustle culture.
If there's one thing that you want our viewers to walk away with from your book and from what you understand about work-life balance and this idea of efficiency and productivity for a 4-day work week, what is that thing that you want them to walk away with?
The one thing is that things are changeable. Thousands of years ago, the Babylonians made up the 7-day week. There's nothing in nature that points to the 7-day week. It's completely made up. The Romans had a 10-day week. The Egyptians had an 8-day week. Henry Ford made up the 40-hour work week less than 100 years ago. And the pandemic has totally dismantled that. And that's what's happening right now with the Great Resignation, where people are saying, I'm realizing I'm working for an industrialist and I don't like it. I don't want to do this for the rest of my life. As we move forward with these challenges ahead of us, we have a window of opportunity to say, what do we want to create together? Do we want to go back to how it was in 2019, or can we do better? And I believe that making Thursday the new Friday is how we're going to do that.
Joe, I want to thank you so much for joining. And I want to end on this comment from our member Olufunke, who says, I love the idea of adding and removing one thing to figure out what's good for you over time. So Joe, thank you for contributing to today's show.
Oh, thank you so much for having me.
That was Joe Sanok. He is the author of Thursday is the New Friday. Now let's bring in someone who has implemented this policy at his company. For that, I want to welcome Robert Ewen. He is the co-founder and CEO of Monograph. It is a project management software company for architects and engineers. He was a partner at Dixon & Moe and president of Section Cut. He has 2 master's degrees from the University of Michigan. Robert, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, and go blue.
Robert, so you guys at Monograph do the 4-day work week. Tell us what that looks like.
So really interesting. I was just had an opportunity to listen to Joe right before this. So really, really fascinating. What it looks like here is we take Wednesdays off and we call it our midweek weekend. We find through testing in the early days that like Wednesday is the best day to kind of take a break. So it's 2 on, 1 off, and 2 on again.
It's funny you say that because I grew up in France, and in France we have Wednesday off and then Saturday is a half day. And it was an interesting experiment to have to go doing elementary school. So tell us how it's been going on. Like, how do your employees and your partners, how do they feel about it? How is it going?
Phenomenal. I think across the board, everyone loves what they do. We eliminate burnout. Everyone just genuinely enjoys coming to work, which is the number one thing I continue to optimize for. And it's just a clear understanding, like, well, what moves the needle for every business? And it's the people that we employ. So ensuring that their happiness on the job and off the job is always on point guarantees success here at Monograph. I think it's been going phenomenal.
I mean, it's something that you implemented from the start of your company for the past 4 years. How did you know it would work?
To be honest, we don't know from the very beginning, but we have a strong belief that everything was questionable. Just like Joe said, like the 7-day was made up by another human being. The Ford less than 100 years ago made up the rule of 40-hour work week, everything is really up for debate. And when you start to question, like, well, do we have a chance to kind of like reinvent the wheel and relook at this from a different perspective? What are we actually trying to achieve here? My job as the CEO and co-founder here at Monograph is to ensure that we're growing as a large company, continue success. And if that's the major KPI for what we need to measure, we need to really focus on like what ensures happiness across our teams, and their happiness also then will result in better judgment, better decision making, less burnout, and ultimately a winning recipe for Monograph.
Yeah, Joe talked about that, the importance of being happy at work for productivity and just doing good work. We have many members joining who are actually working 4-day work weeks. Seth at Meow Wolf says we are piloting a 4-10 schedule here, 4-10 being working 4 days for 10 hours. Lucas at Montefiore Health System says they run a 4-day work week and my staff loves it. And Charmaine has a question for you. So if people start working 4 days, she asks, do they get paid for 4 days instead of 5?
No, they get paid for 5 days. We're market competitive in that regard. We're a tech company here in Silicon Valley, fully distributed, fully remote, and we pay competitively, regardless of like us being on a 4-day work week, doing 32 hours a week. We're not doing 10-hour work weeks, 10-hour work days.
And oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead, continue.
No, that like I just want to reiterate, comp is comp. It's what you need to essentially like your worth, your value to the company, what you need to essentially bring home the bacon to your family. We don't feel like it's appropriate for us to take a 20% reduction on pay when we know that actually doing a 4-day work week will yield 20% plus against our competitors.
We were talking about the emotional component of, the hustle and the grind of working, 40 plus hours a week. And you're a co-founder of this company. And I imagine it must be difficult for you to have founded a company and to lead it, to be the CEO and not feel like you have to check in or you have to do work over the weekend. Tell us how you lead by example and how you stop yourself from hopping on a Sunday and doing work.
I totally believe on like building routines and just kind of like it's training a muscle that we're all not used to. I'll be honest, like in my prior employments, we work a 40-hour work week. So changing that behavior is really, really difficult. Some of the things that I do and that we do here at Monograph is every Monday, and I actually just did this, where the entire company joins in on an all hands, and we do a really quick meditation process to slow down, just to continue to reinforce that we work a 4-day work week. And for us to make the best decisions possible, we do need to slow down and take in and be present at the, today to make those best decisions to drive those business and move the business forward.
And when you interview for people for the job and you tell them, hey, it's a 4-day work week, what is the response? Are people generally happy? Does it help attract? Does it help retain talent even?
Absolutely. Think about 1/3 of our company are families, and they can spend that extra time being with their families. Knowing that we're all fully distributed and working from home, it's safe to say a happy family is, if you're happy at home, you're going to be happy at work. And that's a very much of a guarantee that we're really bullish and we're really positive that when that happens, the work that individual does is phenomenal. I also feel like, I was going to say, if you're not a family member and you're a younger person early in your career, then spending that day off trying to essentially prioritize personal growth and career growth and really pick up that book that you've been dying to read, really start to kind of like attend the courses that are really important to you to move the needle on your career growth. Giving that extra day back to you is so meaningful, and you don't have to spend nights and weekends trying to get ahead.
I love that advice. And that's advice that I would have given my younger self too. Instead of the like working so super hard to get ahead, like taking time to do the other things that make you happy and that help you grow in other areas of your life. Super great. We have a comment from Jim here who says, I'd love to work a 4-day work week. However, in my industry, it will not work. Robert, do you think that a 4-day work week is something that is feasible across industries, or is it particular to tech and to Silicon Valley?
I have a personal belief that it's feasible in every category, in every industry. I also believe it's easier to do it in some industries and a little bit harder in others. And that's just because of the nuance and the circumstances within that industry. Obviously, like if the entire hospital shut down for one day, that would be very, very, very bad for like across all communities. But we could start to consider like what does a staggered approach look like, and how do we design systems that are very in particular for those industries to operate on a 4-day work week.
Robert, you're hiring.
Yes.
What do you, for our members who are interested in Monograph and interested in your company culture, what are you looking for in your employees and when you interview?
So our number one question in every interview across every position is, what will you do on your day off? And what we're looking for are people that are extraordinarily excited to take advantage of this day off and really focus on how they can become a better person and become a better professional. People who are eager to be lifelong learners are incredible individuals that will fit Monograph's culture.
Love it. Robert, thank you for joining us. And thank you for sharing about Monograph here on the show.
Thanks for having me.
That was Robert Ewen. He is the co-founder and CEO of Monograph, and they are hiring, so check them out. And thank you for everyone who participated in today's show in the comments, real questions, all of that. We appreciate it. You can check out some of our other stories to the right of your feed, or if you're on mobile, you can click into the search box. Tomorrow, LinkedIn News is releasing its State of Entrepreneurship report. More people have been opening small businesses in the past 15 years than in the past 15 years. We look into the rise of this with one sneak peek at the founder of Unregular Pizza.
So I was making pizza at home, posting online on my Instagram account, and what happened is that friends noticed them. One day I gave a pizza to a friend of mine from Rome, and in return she gave me homemade cocktails, and that was really something really cool. And suddenly there was a moment when I received a request from a stranger. We said like, okay, this is something special.
Gabriele then went all in, bartering his pizza.
Here in Union Square, exchanging some pizza.
Thank you.
All right.
Yum, yum.
Trading his Roman-style dish for items, food, or even experiences. And then, Unregular Pizza went viral. He got so popular, he knew it was time to open up a brick-and-mortar shop. And he wasn't the only one. LinkedIn data shows the number of restaurants opening doubled from 2019 to 2020. And overall, New York was among the top 3 cities for new businesses.
At the very beginning of my project, no landlords would have given me credit trying to open a pizzeria for the first time. During the pandemic, unfortunately, many restaurants closed down, but I saw this as an opportunity to step in.
That was Jordan Dahl, small business editor here at LinkedIn News, and you'll want to check out the full piece out tomorrow. And on Thursday, we'll be back. We are talking about the growing labor movement as we will speak to labor experts on what is behind the newly emboldened workforce and whether the cheap labor bubble has finally popped. I'm Nina Melendez. Thanks for watching LinkedIn News.